Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys, today's date, May the 1st, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here, the weekend edition. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. On How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, this is a family-friendly podcast, so we do try to watch your language, but however, there are some things that may be shown or heard that might be of a graphic nature, so your discretion is advised. Let's go ahead and move forward. What actually happened after this weekend wrap-up, guys, aside from us? 5 months into the new year, and it seems another person in the Trump circle is about to be headed to another courtroom.
New details about the investigation into Rudy Giuliani and what exactly investigators are searching for. The New York Times now reports at least one of the search warrants served Wednesday sought information related to the former ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. The same Marie Yovanovitch former President Trump fired in April 2019 and who testified as a witness in his first impeachment trial.
Our Ukraine policy has been thrown into disarray, and shady interests the world over have learned how little it takes to remove an American ambassador who does not give them what they want.
Investigators want to determine if Giuliani worked to get Yovanovitch ousted from her position just to help Trump, or also to benefit Ukrainians' interests as he sought dirt from them on the Bidens. It's all part of the long-running criminal investigation into Giuliani and an inquiry into whether he worked as an unregistered foreign agent for Ukraine, while also serving as President Trump's personal attorney. Federal agents served a search warrant on his apartment and office Wednesday, seizing several electronic devices.
Well, about 6 o'clock in the morning, there was a big bang, bang, bang on the door, and outside were seven FBI agents with a warrant for electronics.
Giuliani insists he has never acted as a foreign agent.
I can't believe that these people would actually think I would do something like this, but obviously the assistant U.S. attorneys hate me, and they hate Trump, which is probably the whole thing. I mean, to believe that I'm some kind of Russian agent.
Giuliani's lawyer is also strenuously denying a report from the Washington Post that the FBI warned Giuliani and other Republican officials in 2019 that the Russians were feeding them falsehoods, specifically that a Russian influence operation was intent on sending out disinformation damaging to then presidential candidate Joe Biden. CNN has not confirmed the report. He never received any such briefing, Giuliani's attorney told CNN. Giuliani was a prominent figure on the 2020 campaign trail for Trump and repeatedly floated false information about the Biden's ties to Ukraine.
The amount of crimes that Democrats committed in Ukraine are astounding. And when you say investigate and call Hunter Biden, I mean, Joe Biden was the guy who did the bribe, and Joe Biden was the guy who took the bribe in order to protect Burisma.
Rudy Giuliani was also repeatedly asked if this criminal probe could be about more than just possible violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, but he says he has not been told anything about the investigation by the feds. Meanwhile, federal officials are bracing for a long legal fight over what's contained in those electronic devices that were seized, with Giuliani's legal team likely arguing that much of it is subject to the attorney-client privilege.
Yeah, the only problem with that is that anytime a Trump official or former Trump official usually has been searched, investigated, questioned, take your pick, they usually wind up in court. And it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Because keep in mind, Giuliani, former New York mayor, former personal attorney to Donald Trump, he definitely did do his share of crazy stuff that he said. Along with Trump saying that the election was rigged, that we're gonna fight it. He also sat there and said that the Trump's not in bed, Trump's not compromised, he's not purchased. He's not purchased by the Saudi family. Russian conglomerates don't have their hands in him. His issues with his banks are not that bad. I mean, go down the entire laundry list of things that Giuliani said. Is it really too far-fetched to believe that he may have slightly compromised himself in order to basically do the bidding of one former president? Just saying. Again, he removed the Ukrainian ambassador because the ambassador wouldn't do what Trump wanted. Isn't that the story about almost everybody that didn't do what Trump wanted? The next thing you know, they were either let go, resigned, or fired. I mean, it's. Tell me if I'm wrong, folks. That's all I can sit there and say. But again, with Giuliani, we will still follow that and just see where it goes. I just wouldn't be surprised if it head to prosecution. But speaking of things that don't make sense, Mitch McConnell again wanted to open his mouth, especially toward the 1619 project, and of course, he had issues with that.
Scathing letter against the 1619 project. The 1619 Project was launched by the New York Times. It reframes American history around the date of August 1619, which is when the first slave ship arrived in the United States. Okay, so to reframe history through that lens has launched a fierce debate over the legacy that slavery has played in shaping this country, its treatment of black citizens. The Biden administration has embraced it in some ways by proposing to offer grant programs to states and local schools, incentivizing them to use the 1619 Project in classrooms, but has not made it mandatory. Joining me now is Kamau Bell, host of United Shades of America. So Kamau, McConnell wrote to the Education Secretary, Miguel Cardona, condemning the curriculum in schools. He argues it's revisionist history, and he says, quote, families did not ask for this divisive nonsense. Voters did not vote for it. Americans never decided our children should be taught that our country is inherently evil. What's your response to that?
Well, yeah, actually, voters did vote for it when they voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and against one of the most divisive presidents in this nation's history, if not the most divisive. And right now, I'm old enough to remember January 6th, which is proof that we all don't have the same facts about what goes on in this country. And Mitch McConnell's party right now is perpetuating the big lie, and they're literally counting votes in Arizona, even though that election's been over for months. So absolutely, voters voted against all that. And Mitch McConnell's got a lot of bigger problems than this. He's trying to distract us from all of his Matt Gaetz problems and all of his Marjorie Taylor Greene problems and all of the fact that Donald Trump is still the leader of the party problems. So this is all just distraction. He just couldn't start the war on Christmas earlier.
Which I think is a really interesting point, by the way, that you're saying just in general, that a lot of these quote unquote culture wars are distractions from really serious issues. And I think that's really important. But let me just ask you one other thing, because I know a lot of people are now talking about this, right? And thinking about it. So the original New York Times 1619 Project included a core claim that the U.S. Revolution, the Revolutionary War itself, was launched in part to maintain slavery. The Times came under a lot of criticism from historians for that. They later issued a clarification saying that it was not the primary motivation for all of the colonists. But Damon Linker is senior columnist of The Week. Just wrote recently, the 1619 Project still exemplifies, quote, one-sided and dogmatic style of history that can be part of a curriculum, but not its core. Please don't do this. We will all regret it. What's your response to that?
I mean, me and everybody who went to school and I went to school is regretting the history we were taught, where the settlers were the heroes, the colonists were the heroes, and the natives were, and we swept them off the land because they didn't know what they were doing with it. And there's still talk of like how in different parts of the country where the slaves were happy and they had food. I regret all that. So whatever we're talking about here, history has not been taught accurately in this country. Yeah. And if it needs an overcorrectness into focusing on that part, then I'm all here for it.
And I am all here for it too. there is honestly nothing wrong with the 1619 Project. I think that, again, it shines a light on what's wrong with our education, especially in history, because Kamal Lubell is right. If you look at any history any history book, mind you, it's amazing that, of course, that the settlers or the colonists were always seen as heroes. They were always seen as the quote unquote good guys. They helped the Native Americans. The slaves were rescued or brought from their savage country. It was never the truth. And keep in mind that story has been circulating in history books for well over 60 years. So again, when the 1619 Project comes along and says, "Wait a minute, let's give a historical accurate representation," accurate can be argued. Accurate can be argued as far as factual sense goes, but let's be honest. With the settlers, the colonizers, were not the quote unquote good guys that a lot of people show themselves that the history shows themselves as. I mean, we know off the bat the settlers were terrible to Native Americans. They were terrible to the African American community for 400 plus years. They were terrible to the Japanese and Chinese immigrants. Again, it's time to finally admit that our history is whitewashed, and that in our schools it's been whitewashed. So why not just allow a simple rededication of telling history right? What's the harm in that? Because everybody's like, our country settling and things of that nature from the beginning were terrible. Yes, nothing wrong with admitting it. That's how you fix problems, folks. You fix problems by at first admitting there was a problem. And our problem is our history is whitewashed to make a certain group of people out there feel like it's all right. It's kind of like certain, I'm not going to say because kids will be watching this. It's like certain stories you tell your kids just to make them feel good, and then, come to find out that the stories were fake. Kind of like that. But moving right along, guys, again, I have been saying what will happen is with these riots and protesting, that instead of them trying to actually understand the people, some states are moving forward to suppress.
George Floyd that set off dramatic protests nationwide. Tonight, there is growing Republican backlash in almost 36 states against the demonstrations. Lawmakers are introducing stiff new penalties for public disorder, and in some places, proposing immunity for drivers who plow into protesters with their cars. Here's our Devin Dwyer.
Hands up! Don't shoot! Hands up! Don't shoot!
Tonight, the right to protest in the streets.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
Facing growing pressure from state Republican lawmakers.
It is the strongest anti-rioting, pro-law enforcement piece of legislation in the country. And there's just nothing even close.
So-called anti-riot legislation in Florida and nearly 36 states aims to crack down on public demonstrations, like those that swept the nation after the shocking murder of George Floyd in police custody last year.
If you riot, if you loot, if you harm others, particularly if you harm a law enforcement officer during one of these violent assemblies, you're going to jail.
The civil unrest in Portland, Oregon, and several other cities has become a fixation of many Republicans far from the scenes. Some now demanding tougher penalties for vandalism, harassment of police, and acts of civil disobedience. At least 90 bills targeting protests have been introduced across 35 states since last May.
We haven't seen anything like this in our experience tracking these trends. And unprecedented in their nature and the extreme lengths they go to restrict and chill protest rights.
Civil rights advocates say many of the new GOP bills challenge the First Amendment right of people peaceably to assemble, effectively reclassifying protests as riots and punishing innocent bystanders if even a few bad actors turn violent.
The laws create a situation where peaceful protesters are caught up in these criminal charges, which oftentimes carry very serious penalties, where an individual is deemed guilty of an offense by virtue not of their own conduct, but of the conduct of and actions of people around them.
An independent analysis of 12,000 demonstrations over the last year found most were peaceful. 96% had no property damage, 98% had no injuries reported. But Iowa legislators passed a bill this month to make being present during a riot a felony.
We're going to up the penalties for rioting because what we've seen is not peaceful protesting. What we've seen is destruction and damage in our communities that we should not be standing for.
I really think this bill unnecessarily pits law enforcement against groups like Black Lives Matter and other protesters just at the time when we need to be bringing all of these groups together.
Kentucky's Senate approved a bill making it a crime to taunt or insult police. In Indiana and Minnesota, bills would cut state benefits for anyone convicted of unlawful assembly. And Oklahoma is one of several states extending immunity to drivers who unintentionally hit protesters with their cars.
It's really about protecting folks that get caught up in the melee.
In Tulsa last year, the driver of a red pickup truck towing a horse trailer was swarmed on an interstate during a protest. Several people were injured. The driver, who reportedly feared for his life, was not charged.
They need to extricate themselves if they feel like there's imminent harm, and that's what the bill does. It gives them immunity to get out of the situation if imminent harm is there.
To me, these are encouraging rioting and murder and mayhem in a number of ways.
Susan Bro knows firsthand the danger of cars hitting protesters. In 2017, her daughter Heather Heyer was struck and killed by a self-described neo-Nazi on the streets of Charlottesville.
There was no one around his car. He could not claim self-defense, although his defense in court did try it.
While Heyer's killer is behind bars, her mother worries new immunity laws could encourage future car attacks.
I know that Minneapolis and Seattle frightened a lot of people. I get that. I would have been terrified myself, regardless of which side I was on. But I haven't seen those kinds of riots and protests happen in a lot of the places that are having these laws put in place now.
The wave of protest legislation in part reflects our polarized political divide. 82% of Democrats say the right to peacefully protest is very important for our country, but only 53% of Republicans agree, down more than 10 points from just 2 years ago.
I think some of these bills are so extreme that they won't pass. But it's also the case that more bills have passed at least one chamber of the legislature at this point than we've ever seen in prior comparable periods in prior years.
The Republican push drawing immediate legal challenges in court as one of the most cherished American rights, the right to protest and speak out, now a major flashpoint in our national debate.
Now think about that for a second. They're pretty much, now none of these laws except for the one in Florida, which we're about to go into momentarily, have actually become laws. Most of these actually only have passed one or two chambers. But think about that for a second. That every law they're putting out there is pretty much deterring rioting. I mean, they can't sit there and say, they can't flat out outlaw rioting because it's protesting, which is kind of, the goal is to stop riots, but you can't stop riots because 9 times out of 10 riots come out of protesting, and you can't stop protesting. That's a right. It's in our Constitution. You have the right to protest. You have the right to peacefully assemble. You have the right to demonstrate that you guys, simply put, don't want to. You disagree with something. You have all the right in the world to do so. But every one of these states out here, mostly Republican states, are trying to introduce legislature to deter those from protesting. Why? Because we've seen what happens when protesting actually gets national attention. We've seen what happens when protesting gets the world's attention. I mean, we've seen it happen with Black Lives Matter. We've seen what happened with George Floyd. We've seen what happened with protests that are rightfully doing the right thing. And keep in mind, as the previous article beforehand said already, 96% of all protests have been peaceful. So you're taking maybe one or two, possibly 3 or 4 incidents where the simple fact of the matter is that yes, there was violence and rioting. But again, I've always said this about violence and rioting. When you riot, you seem to get people's attention. And again, rioting only happens when you've pushed a certain group of people or individuals too far. And again, what exactly are there? I mean, aside from the mom and pop stores that might get damaged, what are they usually going for? Big box stores that have insurance, these national chain stores that also have insurance. Do you not know that Business 101 is to make sure that you have that type of insurance, so if anything were able to happen, that you are covered? Now, I know this actually hits more small businesses than it does large businesses, because larger corporate businesses are covered. That's why Target didn't freak out. That's why Target didn't freak out when the looters went in there. That's why Walmart didn't freak out when looters went in there, because everything was covered. But I can understand from the small business, they take a bigger hit because insurance will come back, which could force people to either close their doors or make it hard to reopen again. But again, let's look at the whole point of rioting. Again, this is just people who have been pushed. And it's amazing that the rhetoric that these Republican states use is that, well, we want to deter rioting, we want to deter damage and things of that nature. But yet, let a certain baseball team, a football team, or a college team win, and the same stuff happens, but the crowd is slightly Caucasian. Nobody bats an eye. But when there's injustice, or when injustice, or speaking on behalf of a minority gets said, and there's a riot, then you people want to complain. You can't have it both ways. But move right along, guys. I did want to do this a little short because, again, we do know that the Asian America COVID-19 hate bill did pass and did get signed by Joe Biden. So a lot of people are wondering on the other side, what is the protection for minorities? Which again brings up this article.
Relatives of George Floyd and other black men killed by police say they're optimistic after going to Washington to discuss police reform. The families were invited to the White House to meet with some of President Biden's top advisors after Biden urged Congress to pass the policing bill named after Floyd by May 25th, the first anniversary of his death. They also met with a bipartisan group of senators on Capitol Hill. Attorney Benjamin Crump described the meetings as emotional and engaging. He said the lawmakers made a commitment to the families to pass meaningful legislation.
And that's the kind of problem I have with this. Because, again, me and my friends, we all discuss these laws. And the Asian American attacks got a bill signed in record timing. Record timing, mind you. They got the bill signed. So, again, African Americans and other minorities are asking Congress, like, hey, so the George Floyd policing reform bill, why is that not signed? And again, this is the problem that I have with this, is that, again, like I always tell people, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, because I'm definitely not a Republican because they hate all minorities. Let's just call it what it is. But I'm not a Democrat either because there are some people in that party that might as well be moderate Republicans and they never seem to vote for everything. So the problem I have with this, guys, is just that George Floyd, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, we can keep going down the list of black men that were killed. Also not just black men, but also minorities that were killed by law enforcement. And again, it seems Congress is holding their foot, literally and figuratively, on getting this bill passed. I have to ask why. I mean, the George Floyd Police Reform Act is a step. It's not a solution, but it's a step forward. And for the life of me, I cannot understand what is taking so long for that to become law. And the only thing I can think of is just that well, let's go ahead and say it. The only thing I can think of is just that minorities, as far as African Americans, don't seem to have as much value as Asian Americans in the eyes of the American public, especially Congress. But they will come to us whenever. It's election time. Oh, you have to vote. Get us. Vote for us to keep us. A, B, and C inside. I'm like, okay. So you realize you're like the only choice, because it's either that or Republican oligarchy, which again didn't actually work the last time, at least not for us. But at the same time, you want us to turn around and vote for you, even when you have the majority and things of that nature, but still don't actually get bills like the George Floyd Police Reform Act through, but you'll pass an Asian American COVID-19 hate bill through. Not to say there's nothing. Not to say there's not a. There's nothing. Not to say one is greater than the other. I'm just gonna be honest. I think a lot of Asian Americans did kind of feel the same way as Caucasians did toward minorities until the attacks started happening to them. In which we sat there and then it was always amazing that an Asian person sat there and said, well, they love our culture, but they don't love us. Every black person goes, well, welcome to the boat. I mean, not to make a joke out of it, but that's how every black person felt. When you're an Asian American talking about being discriminated against, being hated on, spitted, attacked, things of that nature, every African American felt sympathy for you. But we also sat there and said, we've been dealing with that since we were brought here on a boat. So again, I have to ask this question. We must not have the same value as Asian Americans if a COVID-19 hate bill was passed, but the George Floyd Police Reform Act wasn't passed yet. I just have to ask why. Even more so, going back to the election, going back to Florida. Florida also did make a law, which again, I said it before in many podcasts. You definitely need to be voting, and here's why.
Also breaking overnight, Florida became the latest state to approve sweeping legislation restricting voting rules following claims by former President Trump that the election was stolen from him. The governor is now expected to sign the bill that critics say will make it harder for millions of voters to cast their ballots. It would limit mail-in voting, including the use of drop boxes. Even though Trump won Florida, state lawmakers claim the changes are needed to guard against fraud.
We are months away from the next national election.
I said it before and I'll say it again. What have I been saying? That if you don't fight for your right to vote, they will find a way to take it away from you. And Florida, along with other southern states, are doing just that. Why? Not because of voter fraud. It's because of voter turnout. That, again, yes, we all know that Trump won Florida. It is a given. It is a given thing. We know it. And there's just no arguing about it. That somehow he got a large majority of Florida to vote for him. That being said, Governor DeSantis, which is basically Trump's Trump's lackey, who will obviously be his 2024 running button if he decides to run, is now going ahead and setting the goal lines again. I've said this so many times. Republicans are doing this because of voter turnout. Keep in mind, the mail-in voting was a big thing. The drop-off boxes were a big thing. People getting organized, getting folks registered, getting rides, getting them however they can to the polls made a difference, along with the states, because states were under pressure to make sure that the election was fair. Not only counted not once, not twice, but thrice. Some states counted thrice and confirmed who won and who didn't. Again, this is all Republicans sitting there saying because the 2022 midterms are just next year. They are already setting in place how they're going to sit there and either win back the Senate or win back the House. Because they can't do anything about the presidency. They cannot do anything about Biden and Harris right now, so they can only do one of two things. And their main goal is to either have a majority in the Senate or have a majority in the House. That's all their main goals be. Their main goal is to disrupt their main goal is to disrupt the Democratic majority, because again, they didn't like the last bill. They didn't like the last bill that Biden put in, which was the $2 trillion plan, and now he's pushing for a $4 trillion industrial infrastructure bill. And the one thing Republicans all hate, they hate when you spend large amounts of money and it's not toward corporations or their rich friends. So again, guys, I cannot stress this enough. Please be aware of the laws that are changing, especially if you're in those states. Now, again, I've said this on Republican states. I have yet to see a Democratic state introduce new laws. Let me rephrase that. I've yet to see a state that has voted blue change their laws. If anything, they've opened the laws to make it more easier for folks to vote. This is why the National Voting Rights Act, again, is crucial. The National Voting Rights Act would prevent the things that Florida, Texas, and possibly Mississippi. And that's only three states I can think of offhand that have already started doing change. There's actually, I want to say it's well over 50 bills by 8 different states that are introducing new voting changes. Again, that Voting Rights Act would make all of that difficult and disappear, because we need a Voting Rights Act, just because we've seen what one party will do to make sure that they can retain their power. It's only making sense, folks, and that's all I'm saying. But moving to the heart of our stories today, guys, we've all seen the joint session with Congress in which Biden did speak, and a lot of stuff, he was saying, which was pretty good. I mean, I can't blame him for wanting to take a victory lap on some of the things, getting close to over 200 million shots of vaccinations done within his 100 days of office, 101st days of office. The fact that he got a COVID-19 relief bill passed that actually did give another one-time $1,400 stimulus check. Should have been continuous, but okay. The fact that he's wanting to introduce an infrastructure bill to finally take care of bridges and roads, the fact that he wants to introduce child care that's going to be covered, the fact that he wants to do all of these things, including he does mention the National Voting Rights Act, the George Floyd Police Reform Act, telling transgender students that transgender individuals that we have your back. All of that sounds great, and yes, you probably heard me on the midweek review say there were some things about the address that he kind of left out, or I'm kind of questioning, but you can definitely go back and watch that. However, let's get to the rebuttal. I can't say the word I want to say, so we're just gonna say disgruntled trash panda. Yeah, disgruntled trash panda. I'm gonna go with that. Disgruntled trash panda, representative for the Republican Party's rebuttal, Tim Scott, said something that apparently is now being played on every news cycle.
Rising Republican star and potential presidential candidate Tim Scott, who grew up poor in South Carolina, then became a senator.
Good evening.
Grabbing headlines with this response to President Biden's address.
Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country. It's backwards to fight discrimination with different types of discrimination.
While many praised Scott, others called him naive. For hours, the hashtag Uncle Tim trended on Twitter before it was blocked, the phrase echoing a racial slur, Uncle Tom, used to describe black Americans who are viewed as too deferential to white people. Scott slamming the comments this morning.
Intolerance so often comes from the left, with words like Uncle Tim and the N-word being used against me by the left.
In an exclusive interview today, Craig Melvin pressed President Biden on Scott's comments.
He said, among other things, America isn't racist. Is it?
No, I don't think the American people are racist. But I think after 400 years, African Americans have been left in a position where they are so far behind the 8 ball in terms of education, health, in terms of opportunity. I think the overhang from all of the Jim Crow and before that slavery have had a cost, and we have to deal with it.
Meanwhile, tonight, George Floyd's brother and other advocates met with top White House.
Okay, so again, disgruntled trash panda, because we can't say what we really want to say on here because we'll be considered hate speech, which I don't see how it be considered hate speech, but it's the truth. But hey, we'll live with it. Disgruntled trash panda Tim Scott decided to sit here and say, oh, America isn't a racist country. Really? Exhibit A.
A 68-year-old librarian is accusing North Carolina law enforcement officers of using excessive force against her during a traffic stop. Body camera footage shows the officers grabbing Stephanie Bottom by her hair and throwing her to the ground after she was stopped for speeding. This was back in May of 2019. Our lead national correspondent, David Begnaud, spoke with Bottom, who says she feared for her life in this incident. David, good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Stephanie Bottom was driving from Georgia to North Carolina for her great aunt's funeral when she was stopped for speeding and failing to heed to officers' blue lights. Now, the librarian says she was listening to loud music, really loud music, and she didn't realize that the police were behind her and trying to stop her. Here's what happened next, and I want to warn you, the video is disturbing. There's Stephanie Bottom, a librarian, then 66 years old and grandmother of 5, face down on the ground after being dragged out of her car.
I haven't running. I was just driving.
Her offenses, according to police, speeding 10 miles over the speed limit and not pulling over for officers in Salisbury, North Carolina. Stephanie, what do you think when that officer grabbed you by the hair and pulled you to the ground?
I was shocked. I was in fear. I was scared for my life. I didn't know whether they were going to shoot me.
What have I done wrong?
In this body camera footage released by Bottom's attorney, an officer tells Bottom that 3 police cars have been following her for about 10 miles. They use spike strips to flatten her tires and stop her.
You put a lot of people in danger tonight, ma'am. How? I didn't know you guys was chasing after me. I was listening to my music.
Did you see the police officers behind you with the blue lights on?
I saw them eventually when I did look up. I was like, why are these policemen, behind me?
This happened back in May 2019 on Interstate 85 in Salisbury, North Carolina.
Pretty exciting chase here. I'm at the edge of my seat, baby.
As police pursued, one of the officers sounded pretty excited.
What's wrong with it, turd?
Bottom's attorney, Ian Mance, says that Bottom was no threat, and law enforcement had an idea of that.
They also pull up alongside her and talk amongst themselves that this is an older black female, she's by herself. They later wrote an incident report where they said that when they pulled up alongside her, she held her hand up in a manner that suggested she was not sure what was going on.
Miss Bottom's lawsuit alleges that after the incident, the officers congratulated each other, and one even brags about grabbing a handful of dreads. Ms. Bottom is suing the 3 officers who removed her from the vehicle, the sheriff of Rowan County, North Carolina, and the city of Salisbury for using excessive force. She says they tore her rotator cuff. I have a good feeling one of these officers, if not all of them, is going to watch this. What would you want to say to them?
You hurt me. You can't hurt vulnerable people. You can't force and brutalize innocent people. If I was guilty for not stopping right away or speeding, it did not call for what you did to me, and you need to be held responsible.
America's not a racist country, right? Again, that's Exhibit A. Exhibit B.
Georgia have now been indicted on federal hate crime charges in the death of Ahmaud Arbery, the young black man who was out jogging last year when he was shot and killed. The Justice Department announcing these charges as it also looks into other high-profile cases surrounding race relations in this country. ABC's Rena Roy has the latest.
More than a year after his shooting death, the family of 25-year-old Ahmaud Arbery now closer to justice. 3 Georgia men indicted on federal hate crime and attempted kidnapping charges. A grand jury finding they used force to intimidate and interfere with Arbery's right to use a public street because of his race. Federal officials saying Travis McMichael, his father Gregory, and William Bryan saw Arbery jogging last February, began to chase and yell at him, then blocked him in with their truck before the younger McMichael fired his gun, killing him. Attorneys for the men calling the decision disappointing, denying any wrongdoing. They've pleaded not guilty. The Biden administration's Justice Department actively investigating several high-profile race-related cases across the country, including the fatal police shooting of Andrew Brown Jr., killed last week during the execution of a warrant for felony drug charges.
My dad got executed just by trying to save his own life.
If any of my deputies
broke any laws, or violated any policies, they will be held accountable.
Following the guilty verdict in the Derek Chauvin murder trial, the entire Minneapolis Police Department as a whole under scrutiny. The DOJ looking to see if there's a pattern or practice of unconstitutional or unlawful policing.
Those investigations and the recommendations and actions that ensue do not only protect individuals' civil rights, they also assist police departments in developing measures to increase transparency and accountability.
And that was Exhibit B. Exhibit C.
Our city is in crisis.
The guns need to be stopped.
To know that in what should be one of the safest places that a kid should be, that their life can be taken away, that hurts. That's traumatizing.
Some kids are trying to hide it. Some are marching like me and screaming loud and trying to let people hear it.
How do you spell racist? What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now.
Right now we are in downtown Knoxville, Tennessee, where there are dozens of people protesting. They are demanding justice after the death of Anthony Thompson Jr. by police.
Say his name! Anthony Thompson Jr.
It's not that these students, these young people don't care about dying, it's that we are not offering them real ways of thriving in life. And if this doesn't wake us up, I don't know what will.
Right now we're about to meet up with a 15-year-old who is a student at Austin East High School.
And that was C. But wait, I got one more. Exhibit D.
Now to a disturbing story. Police officers raiding the wrong home and handcuffing an innocent woman. It was first reported by Dave Savini of our CBS Chicago station WBBM and contains graphic video that the city did not want anyone to see.
I had just gotten home from work, and while I was undressing,
Anjanette Young, a social worker, had just finished her shift at the hospital when 12 Chicago police officers raided her home.
And it happened so fast, I didn't have time to put on clothes.
She was completely naked, surrounded by all male officers.
And I'm just standing there. I mean, terrified, humiliated.
Young was handcuffed as the officers searched her home.
If I had made one wrong move, I felt like they would have shot me.
One police officer wraps a short coat around her shoulder, still leaving her front fully exposed. Young tells the raid team at least 43 times they are in the wrong place.
You got the wrong house! You got the wrong house!
WBBM's investigation uncovered police got it wrong because they took the word of an informant who said a felon with a handgun lived in the apartment.
Nobody lives here but me! Okay. I don't have to shout! This is ridiculous!
So, where was the target? Our investigation revealed he was awaiting trial on home confinement here at a different apartment in Anjanette Young's complex. How easy would it have been to locate him? Easy, real easy, because he was wearing a police tracking device. Police did eventually walk.
Now again, that's crazy, isn't it? Of course, in that story, I did actually cover that story a while back, that now that it's been investigated, there were 100 counts of, 100 counts, and I do mean 100. I cannot make this up. That's the number they use. 100 counts of allegations of misconduct that an independent investigation found with the Chicago police over in that woman's raid. Again, all of that could have been solved had someone just looked at the monitoring system. But to go back to Disgruntled Trash Pandas, Tim Scott's America Isn't a Racist Country, I just literally showed 4 different stories that says otherwise. If America's not a racist country, Tim Scott, then again, you must have just had your head in the sand while you're getting paid. You disgruntled trash panda. But moving right along, guys, I did want to talk about these last two stories before we get to our feel-good segment. This one is definitely something that we all know and fear when it comes to buying a car, especially if you're financing. You're scared of the, a lot of people don't like financing just because the fact of the matter is you're going to, if your credit's not good, and let's be honest, when you don't have good credit, lenders like to take advantage of you, even to this extreme.
This car is a shell. It was a limit from the beginning.
Monique Williams bought this car to get to work, but the bills started adding up after she lost her job as a receptionist during the COVID crisis.
Almost lost my home. I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything. I could barely eat or pay my own bills.
After 4 years of making payments, she says she asked the lender, Credit Acceptance, to defer a payment.
They told me they don't do that. I said, but we're in a pandemic. The water company, the light company, everybody's trying to help people during these hard times.
Williams was paying 23% interest for her loan. Credit Acceptance is one of the country's largest so-called subprime car lenders, specializing in loans to people with tarnished credit. A profitable approach with nearly $2 billion in revenue last year. Company shares have soared during the pandemic. 7 top executives were granted an estimated $55 million total in stock options late last year, subject to shareholder approval. Now, Credit Acceptance is being accused of predatory lending practices.
I think they are deceptive.
They're specifically targeting vulnerable people.
Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey sued Credit Acceptance, accusing it of burying fees, in some cases adding up to 68% interest to loans. The suit says the company illegally called borrowers up to 8 times a day.
Credit Acceptance made high interest loans to borrowers that the company knew they couldn't repay. It's also a matter of racial equity because so many times we see the targeting of communities of color with these loans.
On Thursday, the company announced it's settling the lawsuit for over $27 million, and the CEO is stepping down. 43 other states and the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau in Washington are all investigating Credit Acceptance, and Mississippi has filed suit. A company spokeswoman told NBC it intends to defend itself vigorously and does not discuss active litigation.
What advice would you give to people after what you've been through?
I would just say save and buy a car. I wouldn't finance a car.
If you think your lender is engaging in unfair practices, file a complaint with your state attorney general. Experts say consumers have little recourse after signing, so read those contracts carefully.
And here's the thing. I said the thing is there are predatory car loans out there, especially because predatory car loans love going after people with compromised or low credit. And I can't blame what the woman said at the end of this. Save it for a car and buy it outright. Because, again, these finance companies have all the cards. And the journalist is right that once you sign, there's very little you can do. So again, guys, I mean, you can go down the list. It's like everybody's like, oh, who has time to read all the fine print? You should, because the fact of the matter is what some of these dealerships and what some of these lending companies will do, they will rush. They will sit there and say, well, all the paperwork's right there. You have all the time in the world to read it, and you should read it. Or if you don't feel comfortable, don't sign it. I've always sat there and said this. If you ever feel uncomfortable about a deal that you're about to take, that is your gut instinct, walk away or go, if you're unsure, find somebody who is knowledgeable or is legalized that can look over and say, hey, is this a good deal? Is this a bad deal? Do everything humanly possible before you actually sign it. Because this is what they count on. They count these. That's the reason why they're called predatory loans, because they know for right now there's a lot of people out there whose credit is compromised. What I mean by that is either 600 and below. If you're 600 and below, you're a target for predatory loans. Not only just car loans, payday loans, things of that nature. They like to target these individuals because they get them in loops. That's how I tell people, don't ever take a payday loan. Don't ever take anything to where once you get in this circle, you're going to have to constantly keep paying it, because if you don't, then they can turn around and use the law against you and then wind up paying more, even worse, garnish your paychecks. The one thing about car loans is this, that you're overpaying, and trust me, with the market the way it is going right now, you will be paying higher because of your credit just to get a car. And I understand You need a car to get around. In these days, you need a car. Unless you're in a very nice place with a metro traffic system or metro rail system, I can see how you can get around. But for the majority of us, especially if you're living in states like I am in Tennessee, you need a car. So I understand that, yes, you have to consider the pros and cons, but also, like I said before, if you are financing, please, oh please, take your time. The only person in a rush is the person trying to sell you the car. You're not in a rush. At that point, until you sign, you hold all the cards. So, again, understand there are plenty of people out there, especially with companies like Credit Acceptance. Like, I actually, when I was financing a car a long time ago, they said, well, it's going through Credit Acceptance. I said, I don't want that. And I remember the dealer looked at me and said, but they approved you. I said, I don't want it. Because usually they tell me what lending company it is, also do your research. Because they have to tell you what lending company or what bank is doing it. Do your research on the bank. If you feel comfortable with the bank, then cool. If you don't feel comfortable with it, you by all rights can refuse it. You don't have to accept you don't have to accept anything that a car dealership tells you, because the first thing they'll harp on the most, at least the most unfair ones. There is actually some honest car dealers out there, but the ones that are just trying to sell you the car, it's just say, look, this bank approved you for this and that, and all you gotta do is sign it. They harp on the fact of the good notes, but they kind of pass over the other stuff of, oh, well, you're approved, but this such and such happened. So again, guys, be vigilant and aware. That's the best way I could put that. And finally, this last story I have before we get to our feel good news segment is something that I've always wondered. I mean, it's going back to college. Now, for a lot of people who are about to start college very soon, it does come up to the fact of, in this day and age of the job market, is having a college degree really worth it anymore?
Question: do you need a college degree to land a high-paying job? It appears that some companies are now hiring applicants who don't have a degree. It's leaving many to wonder, is a degree really necessary? NBC News senior business correspondent Stephanie Rule has been speaking with workers who managed to find success without attending college. Stephanie, good morning.
Morning, Joe. Deciding to go to college is likely going to be the biggest investment you make in yourself or your children. And you know that conventional wisdom has always been a 4-year degree will lead to a more successful career. But that may be changing as more and more employers are starting to focus on skills, not just education. Watch this.
30-year-old Ali Alcala has it all. An apartment in New York City, a thriving career in HR at JP Morgan Chase, and more than $70,000 a year in income. What she doesn't have is a college degree.
Did you assume that investment banks were only for college grads, even Ivy League school grads?
I had no notion that you would be able to even get a foot in the door without a degree.
The global bank is actively recruiting people without college degrees through programs that pay them to train in careers like operations and consumer banking.
I didn't have a degree. My future was extremely uncertain. And the program kind of provided a clear way where I would be able to pursue a career path or journey.
I only went to college because my parents made me go to college.
Mark Benioff is the founder and CEO of Salesforce.
Everybody thinks that if you don't have a college degree, you can't be successful in the United States, and it's not true.
The average cost of a 4-year degree has risen to more than $10,000 a year for a public university and $37,000 for private. And more than half graduate with an average of $29,000 in student debt.
Then is college even worth it? It's expensive.
You can create incredible value for the world without a college degree.
I came to this country with a lot of aspirations.
After immigrating from Colombia, Juan Medina worked several jobs, including construction and car sales. College was out of the question.
If I went part-time, it was going to take me like 8 years to finish college and possibly some debt.
A much better alternative for Juan and his growing family? Free online training with Salesforce that led not only to a job.
Now I feel like I have a career. There are a lot of opportunities out there.
More major corporations are abandoning the requirement of a 4-year degree. At Apple, half of their employees don't have college degrees. But this path is untested. Many jobs still require a bachelor's degree. And on average, a college graduate makes 67% more than a high school graduate.
But as the cost of college rises, some say the returns aren't keeping pace. The idea that to make a lot of money, you need to go to college, that's a thing of the past?
To make a lot of money, you just need to get the skills. You don't need to go to college. You can do it all online.
Ali Alcala sees only one reason why she'd pursue a diploma now.
Just to have it framed.
To have it framed. Joe, Savannah, you know there has always been this stigma attached to not going to college, but that could perhaps be changing. Not that it's not great to get a higher education, more learning is always better, but given the amount of time and money it costs, it's just not an option for a lot of Americans.
So, Stephanie, do you think more big companies are going to follow this trend of hiring non-college graduates, or is it too early to say for sure?
Without a doubt, we are seeing all sorts of companies change their job requirements, their educational requirements, depending on what specific role it is. And with more and more online training courses that are free, lots of companies, you saw, they're offering themselves, whether it's Google, IBM, or Salesforce. Employers realized even before the pandemic, we had a very tight job market. It's tight again, and we had a skills gap. So more companies and programs are saying, why don't we offer these skills to more people? And it's potentially going to bring us more potential employees and, as they focus on equity, a more diverse workforce.
Interesting story.
And guys, I've been saying that. I've actually discussed that. And in this day and age, it's, do you really need it? And don't get me wrong, being a college graduate, I will always sit there and say it was one of the best decisions I ever made. Going back from my bachelor's and getting my master's, those are two things that, you know, my accomplishments I am good with. It's something that no one can take away from me. But if I told you, if I told you how difficult it was right now, even with a master's degree to get to where I wanted to get to, I would be lying about it if I said it was easy. It's not. And the journalist and the reporter is right. The job market right now is so tight that, again, it does make the case, as college education is rising, it does make the case. Are a lot of employers just looking for skills now versus college degrees? And let's be honest, in my world of IT, skills are paramount. You know, do you know coding? Do you know architecture? Do you know cybersecurity? Do you know SQL? Do you know Scrub? Do you know Salesforce? Do you know network infrastructure? I mean, I can go down the list. Keep in mind, these aren't degrees. These are skills. And I've said it before, especially in my world, in my job profession, that if you have those skills and you're certified, you will get those jobs that we all see. Because, again, the thing used to be that if you got a college degree, that you were on the road to get a higher paying job. Now, again, that is still somewhat true. A person with a college degree still can make more than a person with a high school diploma. What is becoming the trend now is, let's say that same person who has a high school diploma just happens to be certified, let's just say cybersecurity for one. If you're a certified internal security professional, that's already a $130,000 job base, the base pay, $130K a year base pay. So even with that skill, which again, the thing about these skills is it's time. So if you invest the time in to get those skills and you're certified, then yes, you could, without a college degree, get a very high paying, nice six-figure job. It does, again, bring up the argument, which, again, I said before, not only the fact of skills, but let's not also forget trade jobs. Trade jobs themselves, and also can be six-figure incomes. I've been saying this for the longest time. It's just that it doesn't really get said a lot. It doesn't really get said a lot among high schoolers that, yeah, hey, there will always be a need for electricians, plumbers, contractors, builders, welders, auto mechanics. There will always be a need for those things, especially HVAC technicians. I mean, I'm sorry. During the summer and winter times, HVAC technicians make a killing. So there's nothing wrong with learning a trade. And I said, these are the things that should be said in high school, because honestly, we need to give our people all the possible options that we can. So is college still worth it? I want to say no. I mean, honestly, for me, it was worth it just to get the degrees, but the student loans that came with it that I'm staring at currently, it almost feels like a defeat. But I don't see it as a defeat. I see it as an accomplishment. But at the same time, it is completely true. Is college even worth it anymore? And let's be honest, nobody wants to pay $45,000 to $50,000 a year in tuition for a degree that may get you exactly that very same amount that you paid a semester for. Just saying. Okay, so with that being said, guys, we are going to go ahead and move forward to our Feel Good News segment, because like I see here on How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of news. Sometimes it's doom and gloom, sometimes it can be really bad, and sometimes it can be downright depressing. But it's the weekend. It's actually sunny outside, especially here in Tennessee, because we had rain all week, so I'm looking forward to that. We want to leave you guys on a good note, leave you out on some good positive energy and restore your faith in humanity a little bit. Speaking of actual students that are actually going to college, this student was definitely surprised by the gift that she got.
Day, which is this weekend, we all know it's an important moment for high school seniors all around the country as they decide where they're going to be heading off to school. Well, this morning we have an incredible giveaway. One of these students that you see here is about to receive a $10,000 scholarship to the college of their choice. But first, we want to hear from these young ones. Lyric, can I start with you? Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning to you. Good to see you. We know that you picked Drexel in Philadelphia, and you want to help those struggling with substance abuse in your community. How would this scholarship help you move forward with your college career and future, Lyric?
Well, starting off with this scholarship, helping me continue this trend of bettering myself through education, I also chose the prestigious University of Drexel because it is in Philadelphia, my hometown, my home city, the city that helped create who I want to be. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. It helped me create a better individual, and it will help me better myself through not only helping those tackle substance abuse, but starting programs that will help. Excuse me, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Not only to help them tackle substance abuse, but by also tackling some of the social issues that my community deals with, starting with substance.
Very good.
Yes, and we admire what you want to do, Lyric, and we actually have a surprise for you. It's right outside your house. So we need your mom. We need your mom to help you get downstairs, and we can't be there. So Brother Larry, he's got the camera. They're getting outside. They're on their way. Wow, that was fast.
Come downstairs. Okay, we're gonna try and keep our distance.
There's your running back.
You're so overwhelmed, Lyric. It's okay. You're still on Good Morning America. Oh, I have goosebumps. Take a second, catch your breath. We're gonna show America your story, okay?
Philly native Lyric Wise fought hard for this moment.
Success is inconvenient. It doesn't care about the hardships you had to endure, the sacrifices you had to make, the things you had to jeopardize to get to this point.
The first-generation college student and salutatorian's road to Drexel University was tough.
We've had some serious hiccups and unexpected challenges that would make a person break. Lyric did not do that.
A string of sudden losses for Lyric. First, losing her father to a massive heart attack 4 years ago.
Her education has always mattered to her. And I know her father is extremely proud of her right now, because I am beyond proud of her.
Then, when the pandemic hit, her mom's work hours were cut short, impacting her family's finances.
They would not renew my lease, and I, in the end, had to separate my children just so I could get back on my feet and get us stable again.
Lyric, like countless students across the country, were affected by the pandemic personally and financially. Her passion to continue to get success in life is incredibly admirable.
For Lyric, the classroom has always been an escape, and when school went virtual, she went straight to her principal.
Lyric said, "Mr. Gordon, I'm coming to the school." That's it. Our teachers would say she is not satisfied with any grade that she gets that is short of an A+.
Lyric, they can't stop you,
they're not ready for you.
You deserve this. I'm so proud of you.
Congratulations and reach for the stars.
Lyric, you are destined to be successful.
I'm so excited to see where this next chapter in your life takes you.
Keep grinding. No matter what, I will always be your biggest supporter. I love you.
Okay, so Lyric, we have gathered your family here, the Drexel cheerleaders and mascot. I'm sure, as you can imagine, we know you're going to Drexel right up the street. I'm sure, as you can imagine, you're not just a finalist for this scholarship, and you didn't win the $10,000 scholarship. Our friends at Tallow, a mobile platform that connects students with opportunities, is gifting you with a $50,000 scholarship towards your future.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for going to Jacksonville.
And Lauren, we know that you had a hard time even figuring out how you would pay the deposit for Lyric School. Does this change everything for you?
Everything. Oh, good morning, America. Thank you. Tyler, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Lyric, how do you feel?
I'm so ecstatic. I'm overwhelmed. I am happy. I'm joyous. I'm everything great. I'm good morning, America.
It is a good morning. You have earned it. We're so excited for you. Thank you to the Drexel cheerleaders. Robin, we're not crying out here. It's just the rain. It's just the rain.
That's just great. That's great. You gotta love when good things happen to good people, especially when they have been. I mean, let's be honest. We all get. Life isn't fair, and at the same time, we all deal with obstacles we gotta get past. And I just love to see when stuff happens to good people. I love to see that kind of stuff. Especially she went from being I can't talk to all of a sudden her mom yanked her. I was like, oh yeah, we got something downstairs. Get over here. That's what it felt like. I was like, dang, that mom moved fast. Kind of gave me some flashbacks about my own mom, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, I'm gonna tell myself on this podcast. But two of the stories I do got do revolve around the NFL draft. This one I love because, again, let's be honest, guys. For all those that want to, move forward in sports, you want to play on a professional level, you want to be able to play your favorite sport for the rest of your life and just enjoy life and be able to do stuff. A lot of football players have in their minds, like, once I make it into the league, I'm going to, take care of my folks. I've always sat there and said, now, granted, I'm not as gifted. I mean, my younger brother, if anybody, has a shot at getting the league before I do. The only league I could probably get into right now is League of Legends, because your boy, I'm gonna tell myself. Anyway, what I'm pretty much saying is I'm trying to find an analogy in all this. It's just that football players, once they actually get drafted, especially with the NFL draft, I think round 3 is today. The last 2 rounds, which again, the first 2 rounds, what they call them the money rounds. If you're drafted in the first or second rounds, that's usually big money coming your way. Especially the first round. The first round is the big money. And of course, this football player, QET Pay, decided to say something after being drafted by the Colts. He said something that, again, a lot of players like to say, because, again, that dream's being fulfilled, and I thought this was cool.
Care of your mom. What does it change for the prospect for your life and your family's life?
For my family, she's done working. She's retired.
I gotta talk to Mom. Agnes, obviously, Quiddy told care of your mom. What does it change for the prospect for your life and your family's life?
For my family, she's done working. She's retired.
And you gotta love that. You have to love that. Again, that's somebody who holds his mother in very high regard, and sat there and said, and like I said, when you get to that part where you work that hard in life and you have people that's supporting you, You want to make sure taken care of. And I've always said it best about these football players that are about to enter these multi-million-dollar contracts whose lives are about to change exponentially. It's always good to turn around and see them say, you know what? Look at their parents. Yeah, I got to work no more. And it's like, again, that just goes to show you that, again, great things can happen to people, especially like in my case, I said it best. Let this podcasting jump off, or let me get to an area like Roland Martin or any of those guys that I follow and I admire. Let me get to that point. You don't think I will turn around and tell my mom, look, and tell my mom and tell my dad, you guys just want a vacation for the rest of your lives? I got you covered. Because that's the dream we have as kids. We have as kids that we see our parents work hard, sacrifice things for us, sacrifice things they can't have for us to get to where we want to get to, and we want to repay that back in full. Like I always said, I always said before, I say a promise to myself. It's just that if I ever come up, that yes, I would make sure that my mom and dad are taken care of, that my siblings are taken care of, and wherever I am in my relationship status, because I am in a relationship right now, and that person, I'm not gonna say her name. I don't want to embarrass her. I'm shameless about her anyway. Let's just be honest. I'm shameless about how I feel about her. But again, she'd be taken care of as well. But everybody else, well, welcome to the Bank of Will. To fulfilling your loan application with collateral. But again, it's that whole idea of just when you finally made it. And I can't knock guys who get to do what they want to do for a living. I am so jealous of that. Not to say I don't love IT. I love IT as a career. But if you told me that I could play video games for a career, or if you told me I could do podcasting for a career, and I could make that not only my passion but my way of earning in life, that would never be a stressful day. Never be a stressful day, except when I'm playing Zelda, because sometimes them puzzles. Anyway, but I still love it. Last story I got, guys, again is another NFL draft another NFL draftee who also has a very exciting story of his own. Actually, not exciting. Exciting sounds terrible. Has a very wonderful story, and again, I love seeing this stuff happen to good people.
For roughly 3 hours, friends and family of Najee Harris waited for this moment. The Antioch High star was selected 24th overall by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
The wait was stressful as hell, man. Especially with all with just everything that they told me before, and I'm just glad that it finally happened.
It's a moment that was years in the making, and the journey to the NFL wasn't an easy one. Najee Harris, his mother, and 4 siblings lived in this tiny room at a homeless shelter in Richmond during his childhood.
His mother was instrumental in getting him and all those children through what normally would be the most horrific experience of their life.
On the same day he was drafted, Harris returned to his roots.
It's a long journey though, but it's a hard-fought journey. But at the end, it's the feeling that at the end, after you've done everything, it feels amazing to finally, come out the end of the tunnel, with somewhat successful.
Harris treated everyone currently at the shelter to a draft party full of food and goodies. Those that know him say the running back that went on to play his college ball at Alabama always finds a way to give back to his community.
I've been knowing him since he was a little boy, and he's been a very humble person, and it couldn't happen to a better kid. Like literally, he's a warm, loving person.
Now Harris moves on to the next chapter of his life with the Bay Area in his heart and kids just like him believing anything is possible.
It gives me a lot of inspiration.
And again, like I said before, I love stories like that where you see them come from situations that would have broke people or just would have sent them down a negative direction. And I love the fact of just seeing kids become adults that just make it and just have great things happen to them. I love that kind of stuff. I love seeing that. So again, it couldn't have happened nicer, guys. Congratulations to both of them, and hope for them successful, productive careers in the NFL. But with that being said, guys, that's really going to do it for our podcast today. I do thank everybody for watching. Before I do get out of here, I do got to do some shameless plugging. Of course, the link at the bottom, if you see, copy and paste that into your browser, will take you to my link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook YouTube and Facebook groups for all my podcasts. I'm talking about How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and the Off Limits Podcast. That you'll be able to like, share, and subscribe from there, and be able to hopefully watch those. Now, with that also being said, guys, don't forget my buddy Big BZA Dot, who just did a Rhythmness yesterday. I was actually on the show with him. We actually did do a Rhythmness yesterday. Big BZA Dot on Facebook. He'll be back to podcasting next this Sunday with another edition of the VSTs and be able to go from there. And also, guys, my podcasting schedule still hasn't changed. Every Wednesday is the midweek edition of How the Frack We Got Here from 8:30 to 10 p.m. Every Friday night from 8:30 to 10 is my video game, comic book, superhero television anime podcast called Get Bit, in which me and another guy named Joe and other people that do come on there do discuss everything nerddom. I mean, we do just, like I said before, anything about the news, more about video games, news about comic books, news about anime and television, because we did talk about a lot of television last night, as well as Joe did go into some comic book news that he also loves to give his recommendations on, and of course we all decide to give our opinions from there. And aside from that, guys, every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon, of course, is the midweek edition of How the Frack We Got Here, and a little bit later on tonight, between 8:30 to 10 p.m., is the very only for the grown and adult Off Limits podcast with a very nice topic, and I actually will make that a Zoom jump-in show, so we're going to see who's going to be brave enough to come on that show and actually have a discussion with me. So, with that being said, guys, definitely check out everything there, and if you like what I did, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. And also, if you're watching this in the playback, please comment as if it's well. I still want to know your opinions about anything that I've said on this podcast. With that being said, guys, like I said before, please take care of each other. Please be careful, because COVID-19 is still real. I know for a lot of us that have gotten our vaccination, still wear a mask, because a lot of us haven't got the shot yet, and we need to be preventative and proactive. And alliteration aside, take care of each other to keep the numbers down. And also, if you're able to get the shot, please get the shot. Please get vaccinated. The sooner you are vaccinated, the sooner we can actually help get these numbers down. That is a fact. But aside from that, guys, thank you all those, you essential people. You know who you are. I've said that list of names many times. It definitely does not change, because you guys are still wanted, appreciated, and welcome for all that you do. And aside from that, How the Frack We Got Here is all about staying informed. What we try to do here is we don't try to change your minds. We don't try to persuade you. We simply present the facts as they are and allow you to make up your own mind. Because we do a lot better as a society, as a world, when we're informed. When we're not informed, we elect people like Donald Trump. When we're informed, we elect our first Madam Vice Black President. Or I should say Black Madam Vice President. Yeah, let's go with that. Aside from that, guys, thank you for watching me this far. I certainly appreciate it. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. And I hope to see you guys on my friend's podcast. I've been Willie, How the Frack We Got Here. Aside from that, take care of each other. We'll get through this. Peace.